Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for another edition of Press R. Many scholars on leadership and political power measure democracy with press freedom as the yardstick. If we give such critics credit, then we can begin to categorize our democracies in Africa. You can do that for yourself. And this year, Cameroon celebrated the World Press Freedom Day on the theme, Shaping a Future of Rights, Freedom of Expression as a Driver for All Human Rights. It is with that that we're going to orientate our debate on Press R for today, and our topic is Cameroonian press playing its role? To talk about this topic, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very rich panel for you, carefully chosen just to give you what you want to have on Press R. Dr. Colonel Didier Badjeck, who is a war and crisis communication geostrategist. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Cameroon Consulting and Prospective Company. And he is going to give you how journalists, pressmen should report when it comes to a situation of crisis. Dr. Colonel Didier Badjeck, we are pleased to have you on our set today.
The pleasure is for me. Good afternoon to everybody, and I'm very happy that you have invited me here. I want to greet all the panelists who are there and all the telespectators, and I know that they're waiting the production of this program.
Yes, they are anxiously waiting to know what we're going to talk about. We're going to, at our own level, measure the level of freedom of the press in Cameroon. And just close to you, we have Eugene Nforngwa. Eugene Nforngwa, simply, he wants me today to introduce him as a media observer. He is a household name on Press R. At one point, I introduced him as media and development expert. He is into so many other areas. But for today, Eugene Nforngwa, you're welcome to Press R. You are set.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be back here. It's been a while. As they say, it doesn't matter how high you fly, one day you're going to land, and I'm glad that I've landed back here.
Thank you for landing on the Press R set. Macdonald Ayang is a journalist with Cameroon Insider. Of course, he's one of the outlets of Sopecam. Macdonald, once again, you are a regular panelist on Press R. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Kilian. It's always a pleasure to be on the panel, Press R panel.
Thank you once again for coming. And we have someone, this is the first time he is on Press R. We're talking about press freedom in Cameroon. Is the Cameroonian press playing its role? Elvis Ndi Tsembom, editor-in-chief of the Observer newspaper. He is a field reporter reporting on ground zero, as we have it in Cameroon. Is a crisis zone in this country. We're going to get from him how he is living the reality in the Northwest and Southwest. Elvis, you're welcome to the Press R set.
Thank you very much, Kilian. It's a pleasure to be on Press R today, and I'm seeing some faces like Badjeck. I always saw him in Bamenda when he was coming, when he was still Director of Communication at MINDEF. And for Eugene and Ayang, I think they are people I met often, and it's really a pleasure to be on Press R today.
It's our honor to have you, ladies and gentlemen. We want to thank you once again for gluing on your screens to watch today's debate on Press R. And as usual, we're going to start with a review of the newspapers. Yoti Kale Lisonge read the newspapers for us. Yoti.
Telephones on flight mode has been animating conversations in Cameroon, and the press this week touched on the issue. First, the papers indicate that MTN and Orange are undaunted by the flight mode protest. Then, the Horizon reports that the Cameroon Consumer Protection Agency has dragged Orange and MTN to court over poor services, expressing users' discontent with unjustified call interruptions. The Herald Tribune underlines that despite summons by the Posts and Telecommunications Minister, MTN and Orange users still decry the poor network quality. As a soothing move, the telecoms operators in the country are to reimburse users for unconsumed data caused by poor network performance, the papers recount. One would think Amtel isn't concerned after reading the article on plans to launch Blue Money amid the boycott of mobile services. Newswatch, however, reassures the audience that mobile telecoms networks have pledged to fix disruptions following the flight mode protests. And with a smartphone today, one can access the Dimoli platform, an AI assistant to help students affected by war and school closures. The Herald Tribune highlights in one of its editions that the professionalization of Cameroon's educational system is envisaged. Cameroon Tribune has regional assemblies appreciating the move, that of transferring certain competencies to local authorities as far as secondary education is concerned, an educational system that also trains journalists. The Guardian Post mentions a sorry tale for the private media in Cameroon, with Dr. Fomunyo opining that it is a reflection of the Biya regime's bad governance. The same resource person weeps for what is termed Cameroon's suffocating press on Newswatch. On World Press Freedom Day, The Horizon informs readers that Cameroon is ranked last in Central Africa, dropping 20 places in the World Press Freedom Index. 1 year ago, Cameroon was ranked 138 out of 180. The Guardian Post also spotlights the UN Secretary General calling for an end to threats, attacks and imprisonment of journalists, inspiring Newswatch to go back on the Martinez Zogo affair, disclosing that the judge has denied freedom to Amugu Belinga, a prime suspect, for the third time. Bishops are saying, "Thou should not have killed Martinez Zogo. He too was a worker like any other," and Cameroon Tribune goes back on Labor Day celebrations in the country, featuring workers being honored. Then came sports, with newspaper columns having much to write about, from the 23rd University Games to the Under-17 AFCON, the re-election of Hamad Kalkaba Malboum as president of the CAA, and Cameroon's Joel Embiid winning the 2023 NBA Most Valuable Player. The print media kept readers engrossed in sports news, both at home and abroad. The papers equally hinted the audience on the coronation of King Charles III in London.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If you are just joining us, you are watching Press Hour. We are beaming live from the CRTV Production Center, Mbalatu in Yaoundé. And our topic for today is the Cameroonian press playing its role effectively? And before we go into any debate amongst ourselves, we are all communication experts, I should call all of us here on the panel at different levels, reporting for different newspapers and having our expertise in different areas. We want to, first of all, situate what is the role of the press. I think I should start with Ayang, that Macdonald, the role of the press.
Thank you very much, Kilian. It's very important to talk about the role of the press. I think for somebody who is a practitioner of a media outlet, it's very simple to say that the press is an institution that is there to accompany society's development. That's why even from when it started, so many centuries ago, newspaper reporting, which was the first manner in which the press started to operate. It was all about reporting issues about a given society in a way that can accompany that society in meeting certain development objectives.
Thank you very much. And we have some scholars who have been questioning the universality of the role of the press as agent of development. So what do we do with countries that are already developed? I just want to tell you that is one of the rules of the press, especially in developing countries, to help us develop. But universally, you should have some other inputs in terms of what is the role of the press.
Oh, of course. The role of the press, let me slightly change that to the importance of the press for
Yes,
society.
why not?
And it's that a society is better off if everyone in that society has the same level of knowledge of about what's going on around them, and that empowers them to participate better in that society. And so if you take a democratic society as an example, it means that the choices that people make, whether in terms of who they vote for or who they don't vote for, depends very much on how much they know, not only about the candidates, but also about the issues that the candidates are discussing. And that's where the media or the press comes in. It's also useful in that the press can help society reorientate itself by providing them with enough information to know that we need new policies, for example, or we need a new course of action on a policy issue. Without someone highlighting the issues, it becomes very difficult for society to auto-regulate itself. The press becomes a modifier of society in certain ways.
Agenda setting. Thank you very much, Elvis. We have not heard this word. So many people describe the press as the watchdog for the public.
Well, it's true because actually, like Eugene is saying, one of the functions of the press is also to be able to look at what the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary, what they are doing, and can better convey the message in a subtle way to the people down there. So that's part of the role that the press is actually supposed to do, and that's where investigative journalism actually comes to play, where you actually go to dig deep away from public declarations and what say maybe most people of the executive come to say. The press actually goes down to look at the ramifications of what they have said and actually convey such a message to the ordinary man. So that's practically one very important role that the press is supposed to play, or the press is playing.
Thank you very much. Actually, the press has to hold leaders accountable, and for what they are doing by reporting, they should sit up. Yes, Dr. Colonel Didier Badjeck, to you, what is the role of the press?
The role of the press, what I want to say is that press is very important now in the new world, and the first role is the work of a role of education, to educate all the people and to participate for the development of the country, and make the connection of all the ways going on the good informations, and try to put all the basis of the investigations to search the truth. It's very important, and make that you have a very good social climate. I think that the role of the press now is not to put the fire.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. The press provides a platform for multiplicity of voices to be heard, and so many people describe the press as the voice of the voiceless. Thank you very much. We are now going to go deep into the discussion, which is having known that that is the role of the press, is the Cameroonian press playing that role? Now, that is the question we are going to ask, and I take you to task again. I'm going to begin this time with Eugene. To you.
I think that's a very difficult question, because when you're dealing with a subject that involves multiple variants, there's a lot of things that goes into determining whether the press is effective. Because to be able to play that role, the assumption is that it's effective in that once that role has been defined, it's able to accomplish it. So there are multiple variants. If you take them one by one, you could reach different conclusions. If you take plurality, for example, just the number of newspapers we have in the country, you could reach a conclusion that it's vibrant, it's functional. But if you take the quality of journalism, you could reach a completely different conclusion. And so it's one, it's that in Cameroon, if I were to dare to make an assessment, is that we actually do have a press that exists, at least that everyone can take note of. But the degree to which it's able to play its role has been limited by a number of factors. But there are economic factors that has to do with the fact that journalists are not able to pursue the truth to the fullness of their potential because it's costly to get at the truth, to be able to report a story. Financially costly, but it's also costly in terms of the risks that are involved to the journalist. Journalists don't enjoy sufficient protection. That's my assessment. And by sufficient protection, I'm not talking about that they're given the freedom to go wherever they want to go. No, it's that when something happens to journalists, what are the opportunities for recourse? They don't exist neither in the newsrooms, which don't have any insurance policies, lightly speaking, for their journalists, but also within the policy framework where, for example, if there was a demonstration, I take a banal example, the journalist will be treated in the same way as the crowd. And so there's usually no distinction between the journalist and the public in most situations of crisis.
Okay.
And curfews, for example, would apply both to journalists and the rest of society.
Which is not supposed to be the case.
Journalists are supposed to be given an additional layer of protection, and that's the point. And I think that's one of the biggest hindrances to the ability of a journalist to do their work well, especially in a context like ours that is defined by multiple crises.
Yes, and I will stop there. I will come back to you. Eugene has talked about limitation that comes in between the press person and their job, and some other things that do not make the press actually exercise its freedom well. And we met some Cameroonian pressmen and women and asked them whether the press in Cameroon is free, whether there is freedom of press in Cameroon. We are going to listen to them and continue this debate.
Freedom do exist, yes, we cannot deny that. But how is it really being applied on the field? We know there are journalists in Cameroon being detained because they aired out their views or because they say something that is not comfortable to one or two persons. And if we are faced with such a situation, it is clear the freedom do exist on paper, yes, or as we say, press freedom, yes, but implementation, there are still issues that are really wanting. Our public, they depend on us, and as a press, we have to give them how it is. Their understanding of it might vary, or their interpretation of it might vary. We need to give them information the way the information is. That is the true information. Truth should be part of our expression, line of our duties, passing it in the way they will understand, simple, easy, and making sure that we also don't go out of the codes of ethics that guide our profession. Because if we take that into consideration, it also helps the journalist to go and pass the information the right way. But the press, it's really not that free in Cameroon. We find ourselves, that is our colleagues, some are still in detention, some died in the course of their profession, even though it is not being voiced out or they don't want to be accepted. They don't want to accept it that way. But the journalists and journalism profession, the press and the media as a whole, needs to be given the opportunity.
We
cannot talk of an effective press freedom in Cameroon in spite of the government's numerous efforts. How many journalists are threatened every day? How many are detained in prisons? I think there is still much to do. Journalists to need to respect the ethics of the profession.
Being a journalist in Cameroon, the first thing that should drive you is a passion. Because if you want to base on the economic aspects of you being a journalist, you will always be tempted to move out of the profession. Talking about the salaries, I may not say I'm very much satisfied. The media landscape in Cameroon does not really permit the proprietors of media organs to be able to satisfy their workers.
J'ai toujours travaillé en freelance.
I have worked as a freelance media practitioner for long before being recruited in a structure. The problem of salary is a reality. We do other side jobs to reach the end meet.
J'essaie de travailler avec toutes les chaînes.
Yes, we have watched, we have listened to those press men and women who are giving their positions on the level of press freedom in Cameroon, and they have actually accepted. They are in tandem with what Eugene just said. First of all, freedom goes to different conclusions depending on which variable you are dealing with. Macdonald, there is this aspect of the truth that is coming out in what they are saying. We should report the truth. Us journalists in Cameroon, do we have the possibility to report the truth and then get to the end of freedom?
Thank you very much, Kilian. Yes, every journalist operating anywhere in the world has the possibility, innate possibility to report the truth. But how that happens, how that plays out is a different ballgame. Now, in the case of Cameroon, we are operating in a pretty difficult environment, either because of the legislation in place, or because of the economic realities, or because of factors that are linked to the abilities of the media practitioners themselves in terms of training, for example. So there are a lot of issues that are involved. But I would say that in Cameroon, while there is the will for reporters or for journalists, practitioners to report the truth, they are faced with a panoply of difficulties that actually prevent them. I'll begin with a simple one, which is the issue of access to information. We have found ourselves in situations where journalists have reported based on speculation, or based on rumors, or based on facts that are not authentic, simply because they were unable to get access to the right sources to get the information that they required. And here I'm talking about the need for an access to Freedom of Access to Information Act, which is something that journalists have been talking about over the years. So there is need for such a legislation to be put in place. It exists in so many countries. Malawi has it, Nigeria has it, so many other countries around the world have it.
Yes.
You know, which allows journalists to get access to information that is not gated, officially gated, information that is not classified, information that is in the interest of the public for a particular purpose.
And the reason those who hold information from journalists,
yes,
what they give as reason is that some of the journalists are not responsible in treating the information. that you get the information.
That is a very lame excuse, because which kind of information are we talking about? Like I said, that kind of legislation will tell you the kind of information that you should give to the public and the kind of information you shouldn't give based on the nature of that information. But if it's information on general issues, let me give you a quick example. I've made so many personal attempts to interview the Delegate General for National Security, or any official or any representative that will be designated for that interview, on the problems that Cameroonians are facing about the issue of ID cards. There are so many questions that need to be answered. These are issues that are not classified. Why are ID cards not produced or issued in the way they should be issued? But I've not had any success in that endeavor.
Okay.
I've written officially, I've used other methods. So this is just one example to tell you that no official of the DJSN will tell me that they don't want to grant an interview on the issue of ID cards, which is a general issue suffered by Cameroonians, a general problem suffered by Cameroonians.
They actually have a website, and they issue communications. They have given a number to the public to call. That is a different issue, Kilian. We're talking about an interview. I visit the DJSN Facebook page. For example, I will shock you that about 2 days ago I went there, and I saw a comment. I saw a very rude comment, from the account responding to somebody who claimed that he was being extorted for asking for his ID card. And the response from the official account of the DJSN was rude and insulting. Well,
that is just one example to tell you that on the social media you can really never have a solution on the issue. But it's important for them to even say, okay, we are being solicited for interviews. Let us speak to the media. Let us tell them this issue, that this is the truth about this. Anyway, I just use this as an example. It's not. I'm not crucifying them. It was just an example.
Have any right to crucify
exactly.
them.
It was just an example.
What I am saying is, you never can tell what exactly happened because you have just seen the comment. You have not investigated to see exactly what is the source.
It's public relations anyway.
Yes, you know that sometimes pages are hacked. Information can...
No, but that was an official page.
But, yes, but I also want to tell you that you have tons and tons of thousands of ID cards of people who are saying they don't have, and they're lying up there for them to come collect. That is information I'm giving here. It is verifiable.
That is okay.
It is verifiable.
Let me just give a quick second point, if you permit me.
We'll come back to you. Let us go to Elvis. Elvis, you are reporting in a crisis area zone in Bamenda. How free are you to report? What are the obstacles that you have as a journalist?
Before I come to answer your question, Kilian, let me just add to what Ayang is saying here. That
Ayang. Yes. We have Ayang, actually, whom we greet, is one of our colleagues. Yes.
All right. Just to say that if there was actually the Access to Information Act in Cameroon, the Delegate General for National Security will be compelled
under obligation
to answer to Ayang, and he will not need to go through other channels, because that is very important. It gives public officials the time frame, because he has actually requested for that interview, and he is saying that particular interview does not fall under classified information in the
we are not going to make it DJSN.
No, I'm not. I'm using it as an example. It's not particular.
Let me show you where,
because you go to
let me show you where the example has a problem. You must not get the Delegate General himself. He has so many officials he can delegate to talk with you. Probably it has not yet come to fruition. It is still in process. We cannot conclude that it is impossible, that it is ended. That's the point I want to make. Now, what are the difficulties you have reporting as a journalist in Bamenda, a crisis zone?
Well, I must say that we are reporting in an environment where we have the devil one way and the deep blue sea the other way, and anytime you make an error or you report in a way as though you want to take a permanent side, you can slip left or you slip right. So I must say, journalists in Bamenda now, they have coinages that they use, especially those who report in the language, in Pidgin English. They have ways that they have adopted to report in such a way that they pass across just the information without actually struggling to see if they want to please or hurt A and B. So we are trying.
How do they do that?
No, you use a kind of a coinage that...
Give us an example.
For instance, in Bamenda now, they will not call Amba again. They will call it Ambe. They use for other words that they might just play around with to be able to pass across the information. And I must say that even in Bamenda now, it's very, very difficult for us to report, because so many people, those who are doing TV reports in particular, find it very difficult in areas where many people don't want their faces to actually show on cameras. It was even thanks to COVID that we were able to do so many TV productions without really having some problem, because people could wear caps and use the nose mask to cover their faces. It was really, really difficult to really get people to talk to us.
Yes, and we have Dr. Colonel Didier Badjeck, who is a war and crisis communication geostrategist. He has himself been to these places you're talking about in Cameroon and to other war zones across the world. So he actually knows what the journalists should not do, especially when it comes to reporting and telling the truth, which we are clamoring for. Should we just go and say anything when we have crisis, Doctor?
No, because you can look at this problem with the difference between the communicators and the journalists. You are the journalists, you are finding the informations, but you are going through the people who are making communication. They will not give you all the information that you want. That's the first thing. And the thing that I want to say is that you can jump very quickly the freedom of the journalist and to come in the licensedness position. is that this is a very big problem. And you cannot have a posture in crisis which is the same in time of peace.
Okay.
That you have to know that. And you, journalist, if you are a national journalist, you are a patriot, first of all, and you are a citizen, secondly. So you can know exactly what you have to do. If you are doing your work under the ethics and the canon of the journalism, you are right. But know exactly that the end of the area of defense secret is very easy to jump. Is that. So you have to take care. And you know that exactly when you are going to manage some information which are very bad against your proper troops. You make a demoralization of those troops.
Okay.
What is you want to saw off the branch on the right? What you're
sitting?
Yes, is that. So the thing that I want to say, for me, I think that a journalist have to know exactly what we call in science politic, the real politic. You know what you have to do for the victory of your proper troops, and you know that every truth is not good to say. Is what I want to tell you. You have to manage this situation and take care, because when you are going to jump this side, it is penal problem now.
Okay.
Because yes, it is you are embedded in the problem of the secret defense. Okay.
Talking about secret defense.
Defense secrets.
Defense secrets. Exactly. Defense secrets. Today, with social media, any document without you looking for it can find itself on your handset. What do you do with such information you are not supposed to have in the first place? And what happens to someone who shares? You didn't look for it.
The problem is that you are supposed to know the truth. It is that, unfortunately is that. But I want to say, when you have this kind of information, you have to know that this is secret defense. But there is another problem, is that you have to make a classifications of the information which are under the secret defense. Is that if you don't have this secret defense, many people can jump very, very easily to the other side.
And then get incriminated.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what should I do with confidential, classified information that I find it on my phone without looking for it? Somebody sends to me.
You have some elements that you have to know. You know the type of the characteristic concerning the forces, of your proper forces on the field. You know the information which are very strategic and tactical. You don't have to manage them. Now, I want to talk about the human right. You know that I am a veteran now, but you are not making clinic on the field.
Okay.
I have many examples that I can give you here, and you see that sometimes we can lock the eyes for some things.
And we don't, like you said.
That's the truth.
Yes.
Yes. And now the position that you have as a national journalist will be absolutely different with another journalist coming from outside, because he is coming with his ethic and canon that he knows, and he want to apply it. But they have to be objective. Do not mind at all that when they are coming here, they are not involved in one system of influence, especially with the NGO.
Okay, thank you. So he has talked of something, the truth in his sense, that not every truth should be told, and that's what some people call social responsibility. Eugene, do you accept that as a journalist? You should not say certain things.
No, you can't put it simply like that. It's a very simple way of saying it. I prefer to have a conversation about press responsibility that you've mentioned, rather than all truth is not good to be told. Because now the debate is the public better off with the full knowledge of what's going on or what's off? Because as journalists, our duty is to the public. And the question we ask is it better that people know what's going on to the fullest of the available information, or should we as journalists put ourselves in a position where we are determining what the public ought to know? It's a very difficult question. And that is why the principle of responsible journalism says that, in short, that the journalist needs to weigh the impact of their work and ask a fundamental question: am I serving the public interest? Because at the end of the day, that is the only interest the journalist should serve. If your conclusion is that you are not serving the public interest, it is only under those conditions that the journalist can choose not to publish information. But what is important about this principle is that it needs to be enforced by the journalist using their own judgment. And a third party cannot impose responsible journalism on the journalist.
Okay, I like the way you are saying it, and the Minister of Communication.
I want to finish. Let me finish this thought. Otherwise, I will be misunderstood.
Go ahead.
So, and I want to tie it with what he's saying. And so, the journalist therefore needs to be properly equipped with knowledge, of course, and training, and good judgment to be able to make that call. So that if I'm a journalist and I know that this story is true, because we started with the discussion about the truth, it's true, but the harm it's going to cause will be more than the benefit to society.
So he should wear that on the scale and see whether to publish or not.
But this is a decision that you take story by story. And so you need a lot of experience, you need a lot of training to be able to make that call.
Yes, we're going to come to that aspect of training. We are still on Are We Free? And you've made some points there. I just invite you to watch and listen to the Minister of Communication, Rene Emmanuel Sadi, who is telling us that there is freedom of the press and of expression in Cameroon, but the journalist has to tell the truth, but should exactly just say, I think, what you're talking about. Let's watch.
There's no reason why journalists in Cameroon should be threatened, because if they do their job normally, according to what they have learned, according to ethics, which are relating to the journalism, they should not be afraid. If they do it with objectivity, if they have as a goal, permanent goal, the search of truth, and they do it with objectivity, without, doing fake news and so on, misinformation, they should not be afraid. So people who talk of fear, that there are threats concerning journalists, I think they don't know exactly the situation in Cameroon. I'm the Minister of Communication, and I have no file in my office concerning a journalist who have been arrested because he done his job normally. So it's a first problem. Journalists are free. The freedom of press is a reality in Cameroon. The only thing that we ask our journalists to do is to stick to their profession, which has a lot of prescriptions, and the first of it is the search of truth, just the truth.
Yes, just the truth. And he says, once you do your work, I underline, normally, you should not be afraid. Ayang, not Macdonald.
Well, it's really easy to say that, because when he says, when you speak the truth, and you do so within the context of the ethics of the profession,
yes,
you're free to go. But it sounds pretty easy, but that's actually not the reality in the country. Because this brings me to the issue of the statement. I hear people say that it's not every truth you have to say, or you are a patriot first of all before being a journalist. For sure, we are first of all citizens of the country before being a journalist, which is just a profession. So we don't have any interest at all to report on the kind of things that would set the country afire.
But it's not a Cameroonian. A Cameroonian affair. When I see something that is of interest to America, for example, I see the journalists in America, they line up, defend their country. Why shouldn't we do the same here?
I think we do the same. We do the same. I see Doctor shaking his head. I think the issue is journalists in Cameroon operate under a very difficult context,
and that's why sometimes they don't do their job, because they do their difficult context, as we heard.
No, let me just they do their job. The issue is let me just ask this question. I need one instance or two, an example of reporting that has set the country, that has attempted to set the country on fire. The issue is that people use their personal biases, against certain issues that journalists report, to make a blanket statement that journalists are sometimes unpatriotic. But that's not true. If you see, for a journalist, this will now lead me to raise the issue of Martinez Sogo. He was a journalist who was known for his hardline position on corruption, issues around corruption. And it is on issues related to that he lost his life. So would you say that it would be safe for a journalist to be frontal and vociferous in calling out issues that have to do with corruption because certain big people in government are involved, and you will call that unpatriotic?
Now, I'm not going to open that particular
These are the questions. So we are not talking about defense.
Because
we know that they are defense secret. That is clear.
Because the style of the reporter you are talking about, what happened to him, everybody has condemned that. It has never happened. But to close that chapter,
his style may not have been very
good. Let us not.
But it's a pointer. It is a pointer to a bigger problem.
I want to make a general point.
Let's not deviate from our topic.
No, not at all.
It's not on that Martinez.
No, I just used it as an example because it is an issue that is still in the news.
Yes. Make your statement. Be brief, because I want Eugene. I want Elvis to speak.
Elvis needs to speak.
Yes.
Let's not forget that there are very powerful forces working against the press.
Exactly.
There are forces that have an interest in having a country with a press that is incapacitated. And so sometimes, and the point about the context is that the context in which journalists are operating is defined by the level to which those forces can rise, but also the mechanisms that are within that context to protect journalists from those forces. In most countries, there's protection for the press. It is not a guarantee for the press. That it's a nuanced thing. The assumption is that the press is free, and so we protect it from infringement.
Yes.
In other countries, in our case, for example, the assumption seems to be that someone is according freedoms to the press. The assumption is that the press is free.
We have understood you. We have understood you. Yes, well, if somebody gives you the freedom, you should use it to your advantage. Why shouldn't you use it to your advantage if they give you?
I already have.
Yes, it's about the difficulty. The Vox Pop, I should call, that we watched earlier, was saying that some of the difficulties that pressmen and women face is the economic power, and that's why they will not do their job effectively. They may be caught in that web of doing this thing wrong to please somebody who will pay them. So, Elvis, under such circumstances, how then do you survive as a journalist?
like the Vox Pop was actually clear that many journalists have to do other things to be able to survive. And today we are seeing a good number of young journalists who are tilting their attention towards freelance, where they can report for international organizations and news outlets to be able to make ends meet, because actually working here in Cameroon and working by the standards by which we are paid is actually, one person described it the other day as one of the worst paid sectors in the country. Now, when we talk about the economic power of journalists, many people have judged the level of press freedom in Cameroon as per the number of news outlets that we have. That we are publishing 600 newspapers, we have a plethora of radio and TV stations, but that's not the judgment of how free the press is, or the judgment of the quality of the press that we have.
Where should that judgment be?
The judgment should be on the output of what we give. What do we give out?
And also the enabling environment within which we operate.
That is it. Now let's narrow this down. We are working in an environment whereby we have the economic power of the press that has really been weakened. You look at the subvention given to the private press in Cameroon, the thing is dwindling as the days go by. And on the World Press Freedom Day here, Franklin Sonny Bayan actually asked the Minister of Communication that you are government spokesperson. You fund political parties during elections, you give them money yearly, people who are fighting to take over power from you. And then the press, that is just there to do its job. You cannot accord to the press the minimum money that they can be able to be able to dwell with. It doesn't make any sense. We cannot be giving the press in Cameroon 200 million as subvention to the private press in this country, and we actually want a press.
It was even reduced to 56 in 2023.
It's ridiculous that a daily newspaper in Cameroon that publishes every day receives a subvention of 3 million.
Now, we met the same Franklin Sonny Bayan and asked him, how can what can be done to clean the journalism sector of, call them quacks, and some of these people who are soiling the profession that you so much value? And this is what he proposed, not necessarily taking money from government, as you see, but he proposed something else.
We need quality training. The associations should push for, we already have good schools, but I think that the associations, because the associations are journalists and some of them are editors who are managing the associations, they should look at who come out of the journalism schools and maybe advise the journalism schools on the quality of training, what training is suitable for the market, for the job market, because sometimes, especially when kids come on internship to supervise them, we realize that what they learn is not really adaptable to what is good for the profession. But especially, and I said, the associations are unions, whether they are called associations or clubs or whatever, they are unions, they are syndicates. They have to stand up for the rights of journalists, to defend journalists in danger. And if you're seeking a right, like they say, if you seek equity or you go to equity with clean hands, if we are fighting for our rights, we ought to be right. We ought to be right in doing the profession correctly, and that takes good training. It takes regulation, internal regulation. Regulation begins in the newsroom with ombudsmen. We need ombudsmen who can listen, who see the quality of the work, listen to what readers or viewers or listeners are saying about what journalists have done, and seek ways to mediate and solve the problem. The second level of regulation is professional associations should, whether there is National Communication Council or not, which is good already, good in its own way, bad in the sense that it is employed by they are appointed by the government, and so they do the bidding of the government. If we, the journalists, are not satisfied with that, then we journalists, and this is done everywhere in the world, we should organize ourselves to have our professional regulation, because we know how when you wear the shoe, you know where it pinches. We are journalists ourselves, we know where our colleagues can make errors, and I insist, regulation is not only sanctions. There is mediation, there's arbitration, there are ways you can solve problems between, if a journalist has offended somebody, there are other things you can do. He can take an apology, he can take a rejoinder, and you can write back and say, we correct this story, or it can even turn out that the story was not wrong. The notion of the regulation that is with the organ created by the government is that you have to be sanctioned. So regulate themselves. If you are not a medical doctor, you're not a medical doctor. You're not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. You're not an engineer, you're not an engineer. You're not an architect, you're not an architect. But with us in journalism, everything goes. We should filter. And it takes the associations to filter. It doesn't take an organization created by the government to filter us, because that one will do the bidding of the government, and that will be harmful to the press.
Yes, so much said.
So much.
Yes.
And probably let me just comment on one of the issues he talked about, regulation, and he said the regulation must not necessarily be done by punishing people or meting out sanctions. It can also be done in different ways. And this brings me to the issue of the call that has been very perennial within our media space for the decriminalization of press offenses, of libel and slander. It's very important. Other countries have done it. Gabon started a process in 2015 to decriminalize press offenses after a cabinet meeting that was chaired by the president, Ali Bongo. So there are so many other countries around the world. This is not to say journalists should not be responsible enough, but they should not be incriminated or serve heavy sentences for simple offenses, because offenses that are done in the exercise of their duties.
Well, we'll not go deep into that because we don't have much time. But if you break the law, why should you not answer? That is the question we should be asking. If we do that, maybe.
There's a different way. Okay.
There are actually ways you can do that.
Exactly,
because
for sure.
He has actually prescribed one.
Exactly.
There are areas where you simply you didn't just get a fact right.
Exactly.
And you are being persecuted or prosecuted for that. Meanwhile, a simple rejoinder would have done something with Kilian, would have simply saved the situation. So people should look at the press at certain moments to give them the right information where they did get it right. And if that is not reported, that's when you start looking for other avenues.
I think that is clearer now.
Yes. Don't forget that there are harsh laws under which journalists have been tried in the past in this country. We have the 2014 law on the suppression of acts of terrorism, for which journalists have been tried in the past.
Yes, I agree. I'm a journalist. I agree with all of that. As a moderator, I also have to agree. Yes, Doctor.
I think that I have understood that there is a balance of the duties and the right of the journalist. But here, we used to speak about the right of the journalist.
Yes.
Yes. We have to know that, and he has said something which was very important, is the formation of the journalist.
Yes.
Because the bad things are done by the men who have not been
trained.
Yes, is that. And you have your right and you have your duties. And if I've said that, if you are going through the canon and the ethics of journalists, you will not have problem. This problem of defense secret defense, it is, you know it exactly. You know, because you know when it is bad and when it is right.
Yes.
Is good. When you begin to give the characteristic of your army on the field, you know that is not good.
It is
because those information will go to the enemy.
To the enemy.
So you know exactly, if you are well formed, if you have a good formation, you know what you have to say.
Okay.
Now, I want to relieve something, is that you have to know that when you have an officer communication, in charge of communication, he will make the communication. The communication is to improve the image of your organization. But you want to find the information. There will be a fight. When you are a journalist, you come in me.
That's correct.
If I have something to hide, I will not tell you what happened.
That is very correct.
Okay, my friend.
So you should devise other means of getting.
If I have something that I want to hide, because it will not bad, it will be bad for the image of my defense forces. I will not tell you.
That is right.
And it is the same to the United States of America. Don't see what we say that journalists embedded. It is fails. They are going in a room like that. They send the people on the field. They take the picture and they move the picture that they don't want those pictures to be seen. It's like that. And so they will lead the information as they want. And you will be involved in one kind of journalists who is doing communication. It is a fight against you and me. Okay?
It is everywhere.
You have to understand it very well.
Yeah, he has explained it.
Not for your candidness.
Yes. Yes, Eugene, in addition to what Franklin Sonibayon said, what else do we have to do to cleanse this sector?
I think the one of the questions perhaps we want to ask is why are so many people getting into journalism? Why is everyone waking up and wanting to be a journalist without the proper training? And this doesn't have to do with School of Journalism, but some proper journalism. There are two reasons, in my view. The first, which I think is the most important, which completes what Franklin said, is that it's also a very easy place to make money because it's a very corrupt sector. The press in Cameroon is a very corrupt one. And so it's easy to have a quick meal by becoming a journalist overnight. Most of the people that are becoming journalists overnight don't have an intention to practice journalism and do the job that journalists need to do. They found an easy way to show up at Hilton and have a meal. They've had an easy way of being called into a room and given an envelope, and that's what's motivating them. And so it's very important that we address this problem.
How do we address this problem, Macdonald? Because that is a very serious problem.
Yes, one of the issues one of the ways through which we can address this problem is by tightening up, by first of all, having a proper definition of who a journalist is. You know, if you look at the 1990 law, December 1990 law on the freedom of the press, the definition of who a journalist is vague. You know, it doesn't say you must take proper training. It doesn't say you must have this kind of aptitude. It just says whoever can collect, treat, and disseminate information. That's too easy.
Yes, which have been modified in Cameroon. Today, you are considered a journalist when your livelihood comes from doing journalism.
That's exactly what we are saying, but that really shouldn't be so. And it ties with what that's what has been since 1990. It wasn't modified after that. So one of the ways is to redefine who a journalist is. At least we deserve some respect. The government has taken the pledge to do this for us. I remember the 2012 Forum on Communication, National Forum on Communication.
Yes, and
one of the recommendations made was for journalism to be redefined, but that has not happened. So we have to redefine that. And then secondly, associations also have a lot to play. They should tighten the girdle on how people get into the profession.
Yes,
exactly.
Like you said, when
like in Nigeria, for example.
Yes. Elvis, do you have a press card?
I have my press card from the National Press Card
Commission. Yes.
I don't know. I don't have a press card.
Is that one of the ways in which that problem can be handled?
No, it's not a matter of the press card. Like we are saying here, and like Franklin said quite clearly, the first thing has also got to do with the kind of journalism associations we have. The level of entry into the profession has a very big problem. Everybody, like anybody today, can get up, constitute 4 or 5 persons, they form their own association, and they rival those who are actually there to defend the interests of the journalists. So I don't know why the law will give just one medical counsel to the medical doctors, one bar to the lawyers, and several plethora of opportunities for journalism associations to be born overnight. If we have one union of journalists in Cameroon, we can be able to auto-regulate ourselves and know the way people enter and leave the profession without even working close to a body known as the NCC.
Thank you very much. We are going to give the chance to Dr. Didier Badjeck to give the way forward. Your last word, advice, how do we, according to you, cleanse this sector to be what we want it to be?
I think that I want freedom in this work of journalism, which is very important for the building of our society and the development, first of all. And I want to tell to my brothers that they are citizens of a state.
Yes.
And they cannot move the state when things fall apart. They have to work with patriotism.
Thank you very much.
And they know exactly the balance.
Thank you. Thank you. Our time is up. To say that if they spoil it, the ship sinks.